In the previous video, you learnt about the lab method of preparation of hydrogen and the industrial method of preparation of hydrogen. In this video, you will learn about the two types of chemical reactions, that is oxidation reaction and reduction reaction. We will learn the two types of chemical reactions which always go hand in hand, and that is oxidation and reduction reaction. You did not learn this particular set of reactions in the chapter chemical changes and reactions, but now you will be learning them in a little more detail. Oxidation reaction. Oxidation was first used for a reaction in which oxygen was combined with a substance. That means whenever a substance combines with oxygen, it was known as oxidation reaction. The donor of oxygen was the oxidizing agent. So the substance which gave oxygen was called as a oxidizing agent. Actually, in reality, there is no reaction which is alone oxidation or which is alone reduction. Always, whenever a chemical reaction takes place, oxidation and reduction will take place simultaneously. Hence, every chemical reaction is a redox reaction. Reduction reaction. Reduction was first used for a reaction in which oxygen was removed from a substance. The acceptor of oxygen was the reducing agent. So the substance which accepted oxygen was called as a reducing agent. Again, we have a redox reaction, which means oxidation and reduction takes place simultaneously. Now we will learn each of these in a little more detail. Let us learn what is oxidation reaction. We have certain characteristics which tell us that oxidation reaction is taking place. One such characteristic that we have is addition of oxygen to a substance. So that we already learnt in the previous slide that when a substance combines with oxygen, we call it as oxidation. That was known earlier. So the same thing we have with an example here. When copper combines with oxygen, copper 2 oxide is formed. Now you can see the reactant side and the product side. What difference you notice? You notice that copper is combining with oxygen to form copper 2 oxide. So this is addition of oxygen, and that is oxidation reaction. This is one of the characteristic of oxidation reaction. Now we have another example for the same. Here you can see on the reactant side we have hydrochloric acid, and this combines, hydrogen combines with oxygen to form water. So that means this is the oxidized product. Here copper 2 oxide is the oxidized product. Now hydrogen sulfide is reacting with sulfur dioxide to form water and sulfur. Now hydrogen sulfide, here hydrogen is combining with oxygen. So it is addition of oxygen, and hence this is oxidation reaction, and the oxidized product here is water. And the second characteristic of oxidation reaction is removal of hydrogen from a substance. We have an equation for the same. You can notice on the reactant side and on the product side, H2S on the reactant side and sulfur on the product side. So H2S, in H2S, hydrogen is removed to form sulfur. So we know it is removal of hydrogen. So that is oxidation reaction. We have another example again, hydrogen sulfide reacting with nitric acid, and here again we have, this is the concentrated nitric acid which will form water, nitrogen dioxide and sulfur. So you can see on the reactant side it is hydrogen sulfide which will lose hydrogen and form sulfur on the product side. Here again we have one more equation for the same, hydrogen sulfide reacting with iron 3 chloride to form iron 2 chloride, hydrochloric acid and sulfur. Here again we have hydrogen sulfide which loses hydrogen to form sulfur. So in all these cases we have seen there is removal of hydrogen. So whenever there is removal of hydrogen, we call it as oxidation reaction. Actually, according to your scope, you have only these two characteristics, but I will teach you one more to be on the safer side, and it is important for you also. So you learn that also. Actually, there are 5 characteristics. We will not be dealing with the other two for this standard. But the third one, since it is important, we will discuss that. Loss of electrons from an atom or an ion. Now we will know how an electron is lost from an atom or from an ion with the help of some examples. Here we have iron reacting with sulfur to form iron 2 sulfide. This is the equation. Now you know iron here loses 2 electrons. It's a metal. It will lose 2 electrons and it will form Fe2 plus. So here what is happening? Because it is losing, we are showing loss by minus. Because it is losing 2 electrons, we call it as oxidation reaction. Similarly, sulfur here, one should lose, the other should gain. Sulfur here gains and forms S2 minus. It's a non-metal. But this is actually reduction. I am not mentioned here because we are learning about oxidation reaction. And I did tell you that we will never have oxidation reaction alone, reduction reaction alone. Always a chemical reaction is a redox reaction. So iron here is oxidized to iron 2 sulfide. So iron oxidized to iron 2 sulfide. That means the oxidized product is iron 2 sulfide. In the same way here, in all these three cases, the oxidized product is sulfur. I hope you understood these three characteristics. One is addition of oxygen to a substance. Second is removal of hydrogen from a substance. And the third is loss of electrons from an atom or ion. So whenever these three takes place, we call that reaction as oxidation reaction. Now whatever characteristics oxidation reaction has, the same characteristics reducing agent has. So once you learn what is oxidation reaction, it is so easy for you. The opposite you learn for reduction reaction and the same characteristic you learn for reducing agent. And whatever reduction reaction characteristic is there, the same characteristic oxidizing agent will have. So if you know one, you will be knowing four. So learn oxidation reaction very well. Then you can know the concept and learn accordingly. Do not keep by hearting everything. If you learn this thoroughly, you can apply this and learn the others as well. So now you know what is oxidation reduction very well. We will now learn what is reduction reaction. We will learn what is reduction reaction and the characteristics for the same. You have already learned what is oxidation reaction. Now reduction reaction. Removal of oxygen from a substance. This is the first characteristic of a reduction reaction. With the help of examples, we'll know it better. We have copper 2 oxide reacting with hydrogen to form copper and water. You always have to observe the equations carefully for oxidation and reduction reaction. Here you notice copper 2 oxide on the reactant side and copper on the product side. So the difference here is copper 2 oxide is losing oxygen to form copper. Hence it is removal of oxygen and that is why it is a reduction reaction. Another example, zinc oxide reacting with coke or carbon to form zinc and carbon monoxide. Here again zinc oxide on the reactant side and zinc on the product side. The difference is zinc oxide is losing oxygen. So removal of oxygen again is reduction reaction. And whichever loses oxygen, that becomes the reduced product. Copper is a reduced product here. Zinc is a reduced product in this case. Addition of hydrogen to a substance. Chlorine reacting with hydrogen sulfide to form hydrogen chloride and sulfur. Again observe the reaction very carefully. We have chlorine on the reactant side and hydrogen chloride on the product side. Now what is happening here? Chlorine is combining with hydrogen. So it is forming hydrogen chloride. So addition is what? Reduction reaction. So the reduced product is hydrogen chloride here. Bromine reacting with hydrogen sulfide to form hydrogen bromide and sulfur. Again observe bromine on the reactant side, which is combining with hydrogen to form hydrogen bromide. So hydrogen bromide is a reduced product here. Now the third characteristic is gain of electrons from an atom or ion. So here we have an equation, iron 3 chloride reacting with sulfur and water to form iron 2 chloride, hydrogen chloride and sulfuric acid. Now here iron, we say gain of electrons from an atom or ion. We have ion here, that is Fe3 plus, which is gaining one electron to form Fe2 plus. So iron 3 chloride is reduced to iron 2 chloride. That means here iron 2 chloride is a reduced product. But when we talk about the ion, Fe3 plus is gaining one to become Fe2 plus. Chlorine reacting with hydrogen sulfide to form hydrogen chloride and sulfur is another example. In this case, chlorine is gaining one electron. So gain is what? Reduction reaction. Gaining one electron to form Cl1 minus. So because it is gain of electron, we call this as reduction reaction. And here we have chlorine is reduced to hydrogen chloride. That means the reduced product here is hydrogen chloride. Now whatever characteristic the reduction reaction has, I told you the same characteristic the oxidizing agent will have. That means oxidizing agent is an agent in which removal of oxygen takes place, addition of hydrogen takes place, gain of electrons take place. The same characteristic. So learn for oxidation reaction, write opposite for reduction. And what is oxidation? The same characteristic reducing agent will have. What is reduction reaction? The same characteristic oxidizing agent will have. The pair of reaction that you learnt, oxidation and reaction, is depicted in the form of a table for you to compare and contrast and learn it in a better way. As I told you, we have oxidation reaction on this side and reduction reaction on the other side with characteristics and equations. Now you know that oxidation reaction is a reaction which involves addition of oxygen. The opposite is for reduction reaction. It is removal of oxygen. And in oxidation it is removal of hydrogen, reduction addition of hydrogen. Oxidation loss of electrons, reduction gain of electrons. So you only have to know what is oxidation reaction. Oxidation reaction means addition of oxygen, removal of hydrogen, loss of electrons. The opposite you can very easily write for reduction. Learn it in that way to avoid confusion, especially when you face exams and all. In that tension you tend to forget. That is why learn only one, and you know the concept, you apply and write the opposite for the other. And I have already told whatever characteristic oxidation reaction has, the same reducing agent will have, and whatever characteristic reduction reaction will have, the same oxidizing agent will have. We have learnt what is oxidation reaction and what is reduction reaction. Now we will know what is meant by a redox reaction. We have a definition here for redox reaction. A redox reaction is a chemical reaction involving oxidation of one substance and reduction of the other. This is one definition. And in terms of loss or gain of electrons, we have one more definition. Redox reaction involves loss or gain of electrons where oxidation and reduction occur simultaneously. That means if one substance loses electrons, the other has to gain. So when this occurs simultaneously, we call such a reaction as redox reaction. We have an example for the same. Here we have zinc reacting with copper sulfate to form zinc sulfate and copper. You know this very well as a simple displacement reaction. Now the same reaction is split. See, you have copper 2 plus and SO4 2 minus here. Now what will happen to this copper 2 plus and SO4 2 minus and zinc? Zinc is losing 2 electrons and it is becoming Zn2 plus because it is loss of electrons. You can see that is shown by minus 2e minus. Because it is losing 2 electrons, it is oxidation reaction. Simultaneously, copper ion. Cu2 plus is gaining 2 electrons, and since it gains 2 electrons, it becomes an atom, copper, and gain is reduction. So in this particular reaction, we have loss of electrons and gain of electrons, and that is why it is a redox reaction. As I told you, no reaction is alone oxidation or alone reduction. Every chemical reaction is a redox reaction. We'll learn one more example. Hydrogen sulfide reacting with chlorine to give hydrogen chloride and sulfur. Now see here, observe the reaction very carefully. H2S on the reactant side, sulfur on the product side. H2S is losing hydrogen. So loss of hydrogen or removal of hydrogen is what? It is oxidation. So hydrogen sulfide is getting oxidized to sulfur. See here, H2S is oxidized to sulfur because chlorine removes hydrogen from H2S. So because this is getting oxidized, H2S is getting oxidized, but it is a reducing agent. Like that you should learn. Okay. Hydrogen sulfide, I repeat, is getting oxidized. You can see in the reaction, hydrogen sulfide is getting oxidized, but it is a reducing agent. Simultaneously, chlorine here becomes hydrogen chloride. So you notice the difference. Addition of hydrogen. Addition of hydrogen is what? Reduction. That means chlorine is getting reduced to hydrogen chloride. HCl is a reduced product. Chlorine is reduced to HCl, gain of hydrogen from H2S. This gains hydrogen from H2S, and HCl is a reduced product. Now chlorine is getting reduced, but it itself is an oxidizing agent. That is how you should know. I repeat again, hydrogen sulfide is getting oxidized, but it is a reducing agent. Chlorine is getting reduced, but it is an oxidizing agent. This is how you will remember very well. So we have H2S as a reducing agent and chlorine as an oxidizing agent. As I told you, H2S is getting oxidized, but it is a reducing agent. Chlorine is getting reduced, but it is an oxidizing agent. Know this very well. Practice these equations, and in the practice sheet which follows along with this video, I have given you a lot of indirect questions. Basically, in oxidation and reduction reaction, you have all indirect questions, all application based. Solve them well and jot down all the doubts so that we can clarify them in the doubt clearing session. Thank you, students. This is the end of the chapter hydrogen.